Thomas Massie lost his primary in Kentucky this week. Alex Murdaugh is suing the clerk of court from his trial. We also break down the deadly shooting at a mosque in California. All that and more right now. Welcome to episode 58 of the Republic Brothers podcast. He's Matt, I'm Mike, and today is May 20th, 2026. Please hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss our next episode on Monday. We're starting today's episode with some big news out of Kentucky this week. Kentucky's 4th Congressional District Republican Representative Thomas Massie has officially lost his primary. He was unseated on Tuesday night by Ed Gallrein, a former Navy SEAL and local farmer. Now, how did this happen to a multi-term incumbent? 2 words, Donald Trump. This race became a pure referendum on loyalty to the president. Trump handpicked Gallrein, campaigned for him in Kentucky back in March, and the message to the voters was clear. Massie bucked the party and the president too many times, and it was time for a change. Gallrein ran explicitly on his military record and an unwavering commitment to Trump's agenda. Thomas Massie did not go quietly into the night, however. He gave a 20-minute concession speech to a crowd chanting America First. Massie warned about the dangers of a legislative branch turning into mob rule by just following the political winds rather than the Constitution, and he explicitly teased that he's not done yet, hinting at a 2028 run. This race also saw millions of dollars poured in from pro-Israel groups targeting Massie, which Massie didn't hesitate to take a parting shot at on election night. He also tried his hand at a weird trans joke.
I'm not even sure that I'm bipartisan. Bi means you like both. I might be trans-partisan because I can't identify with either some days.
A 20-minute concession speech is too long for my liking, but okay. We have seen from previous elections that Trump's endorsement still carries a lot of weight. I do understand what Massie is saying about the mob rule, and we see how well Democrats are able to keep their people in line. If the left had more than just John Fetterman who would vote with the other side, people could do what was best for their constituency. But instead, we see Democrats in particular able to keep everyone in line for the national agenda.
Massie seems like he's been after President Trump for a while now. We've seen multiple times now that Trump's endorsement carries some weight. I guess Massie just didn't think it would happen to him. It also seems to me like he's been pandering to Democrats, and I don't think that's really helping his case. He's been very critical of the Epstein files and how they were released, and we've said as well that we didn't think that that was handled very well. But I get the impression from Massie that he thinks that Trump was involved somehow. What's your opinion on Massie and his policies and just everything we know about him?
I get the impression that he thought because he was the incumbent, his record was going to be enough to keep him in office despite Trump endorsing someone else. Massie did vote with Republicans around 90% of the time, which is less than the average Republican representative. That is why Trump wanted someone else in his seat. The margins for Republicans are so thin they can't afford to have many vote with Democrats. We've seen others that went against Trump lose their seats, so Massie had to know this would be a tough election to win. He was pandering to the left on some things, but everyone should know Democrats would use him to their advantage and then throw him to the wolves the moment it was convenient. We saw it with Marjorie Taylor Greene. They will use you until you aren't useful anymore.
Yeah, and in the event he comes back into politics in a couple of years and tries to make a run at things again, those same Democrats that he was voting with are not going to stand up with him. They're going to do everything they can to try to tear him down.
Yeah, he still has an R next to his name, so he's still racist in their minds. He sides with them on a few things, and they're only going to use him on those things. They're going to say Trump is wrong, and even his base knows it, which they'll call Massie his base. On everything else, he doesn't know what he's talking about in their mind.
I've seen a lot of stuff on social media just in the last 24 hours about how people are saying that Thomas Massie is a true representative of the Republican Party, and there's some freedom score thing that they keep referring to. What do you think about all the people that say that he is a true representative of the Republican Party and that he lost because of all the money that Gallrein was getting from Israel?
Well, a 90% Republican voting record would indicate He is a representative for the Republican Party. He had disagreements with Trump, particularly when it came to Iran. That would most likely be why all the money from the pro-Israel groups wanted him out. Massie was with Democrats in saying Trump needed congressional approval for strikes on Iran. That was a big sticking point with Trump. We also have seen every president before Trump ignore that congressional approval process.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if he was against any of the other things that he thinks needed congressional approval in the last several years.
Obama never got congressional approval. Just imagine if Obama would have needed to go get congressional approval to take out Osama bin Laden. We would have had a debate on it, and Osama would have known not to be where he was. And we wouldn't have got him anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Now, switching gears here a little bit, we mentioned in the last episode that Alex Murdaugh's 2023 double murder convictions were overturned. Now, we have a little update on that. Because of that, Murdaugh's defense team immediately filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the former Colleton County Clerk of Court, Rebecca Hill. The South Carolina Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Becky Hill essentially sabotaged the original 6-week trial. The justices accused her of placing her fingers on the scale of justice and described her actions as breathtaking and disgraceful. According to juror testimonies and the court's findings, Hill heavily compromised the jury's independence, telling jurors to watch Murdaugh's body language closely when he took the stand and instructing them not to be fooled or confused by his defense. Pushing the jury to reach a quick guilty verdict, having unauthorized private discussions with the jury foreperson, and even interacting improperly during a site visit to the Murdaugh family estate. The Supreme Court noted she was driven by the siren call of celebrity. I said before I was pretty sure she was writing a book, and that was correct. Her goal was to secure a quick, dramatic guilty verdict to drive up sales for her self-published book about the trial. Days after winning the appeal, Murdaugh's attorneys filed a federal lawsuit in Charleston accusing Hill of violating his Sixth Amendment right to an impartial jury and 14th Amendment due to process protections. The lawsuit is targeting $600,000. Murdaugh's defense team notes that he emptied his 401k retirement funds to pay for that original 6-week defense. Money that they argue was completely wasted because Hill compromised the trial from the inside. Murdaugh's attorney Jim Griffin explicitly stated at a press conference that if they win, none of this money will go to Alex Murdaugh personally, because he still owes millions in restitution to the victims of his financial crimes. Any funds recovered will go directly toward paying off those debts. The primary goal of the suit is public accountability and using the discovery process to dig deeper into what else Hill might have done.
Really sounds like Rebecca Hill saw an opportunity to make some money off of this. That is shameful, and she would be outraged if the shoes were on the other foot and her chance for a fair trial was taken away. That drive for money for her was too strong, and she should lose any money she makes from this.
I did see that her book was officially pulled from, I don't know exactly which sites, but it was basically pulled from everywhere. So
Good.
Yeah. I was skeptical of how much she might have actually influenced the jury. But after reading some of the stories and testimony from those jurors, it sounds like she did impact the trial slightly. That being said, I still think he's going to be found guilty when they retry him. So what she did was just, there was no reason to do it.
Even if she only convinced one juror that he was guilty without looking at the evidence, that's still taking away his chances for a fair trial. And as you said, what makes this worse was he probably would have been found guilty anyways. She really wasted a lot of time and resources. Now we have to do this retrial. And that's even more money down the drain.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's some evidence that's going to be taken out because of this whole thing, so they're going to have less to go on. But the prosecutor said that they are still confident that they're going to get a guilty verdict. So we'll see what happens. Now to get into probably the biggest piece of news we have this episode, definitely the most sad. A devastating shooting took place this past Monday, May 18th, at the Islamic Center of San Diego, the largest mosque in San Diego County. The attack resulted in the deaths of 3 heroic community members, while 2 teenage gunmen died from apparent self-inflicted gunshot wounds shortly after fleeing the scene. Law enforcement and the FBI are investigating the attack as a federally motivated hate crime. Roughly 2 hours before the shooting began, the mother of one of the suspects called local police to report that her son was missing. She warned authorities that he was suicidal and had taken her vehicle along with several of her personal firearms. San Diego police began tracking the vehicle using license plate recognition technology, but the active shooter situation began at the mosque before officers could intercept them. Around 11:47 a.m., just prior to midday prayers, the two gunmen, aged 17 and 18, arrived at the Islamic Center fully armored. At the time, the building housed an upstairs apartment and the Al-Rashid School, where roughly 140 children were attending classes. The tragedy was prevented from becoming a mass casualty event involving those children due to the immediate brave actions of three men. And I want to call out these three men and what exactly they did, because this is the most important part of the story. I might butcher these names a little bit, but first is Amin Abdullah. He was a security guard, 51 years old. Abdullah spotted the armed suspects trying to barge through the front doors and immediately engaged them in a gun battle. Even after being wounded in the initial exchange, he continued firing back to force the gunmen back outside. Crucially, Abdullah used his radio to alert the teachers inside to initiate an immediate lockdown. Because this center regularly practices active shooter drills, the classrooms were successfully secured within seconds. Abdullah was fatally shot outside after forcing the gunmen back. The next two men, Mansour Kazia, 78, and Nader Awad, 57. After killing Abdullah, the gunmen managed to re-enter the lobby and went room to room searching the building. They came within 15 feet of where children were hiding. However, Kazia, a beloved 40-year handyman and caretaker at the mosque, and Awad, a neighbor who lived across the street, managed to draw the gunmen's attention and pull them back outside into the parking lot. The gunmen fatally shot both men before fleeing the property. A little side note I want to say here too is that it is absolutely disgusting that at schools we have to practice active shooter drills. When I was in school, we didn't do that. We had tornado drills, hurricanes, stuff like that. We never practiced active shooter drills.
No, I'm a little younger than you, and we didn't do them when I was in school either. Like you said, mostly it was tornadoes and earthquakes.
Yeah, and the fire drill. That was the one you got the most, but never an active shooter drill. That's just mind-boggling.
Our mental health as a nation, in particular for younger people, has really gone down the drain the last 10 or 15 years.
Absolutely. Now, police arrived on the scene within 4 minutes of the initial 911 call. As they arrived, they received reports of the suspects firing from their vehicle at a nearby landscaper. Moments later, officers discovered the two teenagers dead from self-inflicted gunshot wounds in their vehicle, stopped in the middle of a nearby road. No officers fired their weapons. The 140 children inside the mosque school were safely evacuated by police and reunited with their families as a designated zone nearby. Before we get into the suspects and their motives, I just want to say that these three guys were true heroes. How much different would this have gone if that security guard did not have a gun? We say it all the time. We protect our money, our athletes, and our celebrities and our politicians with guns. Why would we not protect our children with guns?
This would have been much worse if not for these three. The early warning saved lives for sure. That is one of the reasons people should have guns. It levels the playing field when bad guys with guns try to do something. The best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. I know some people think you should leave it to the police, but if the gunmen get a head start, they can take many lives before the police arrive. 4 minutes is a quick response time, but a lot of damage can be done in 4 minutes. These three men saved many lives with their actions, and they should be celebrated and remembered for it.
Yeah, 4 minutes is an eternity. And for anyone that doesn't think that that's not a long time, try to hold your breath for 60 seconds. And then try to imagine doing that for 240 seconds. That is a super long time. If you're especially just sitting there, helpless, waiting for police to show up.
Yeah, and even with simple guns, even revolvers, you could get dozens of shots off in 4 minutes.
Yeah. So let's talk about these two teenagers. They initially met online where they consumed and shared extremist content. Investigators note they espoused a broad hatred targeting a wide range of races and religions. The suspects reportedly live-streamed the beginning of the attack and authored a 75-page document. Extremist experts note the imagery, clothing choices, and live streaming format strongly mirrored the tactics used in the 2019 Christchurch mosque shootings in New Zealand. Following the attack, a search of 2 residences associated with the suspects uncovered at least 30 firearms, ammunition, and a crossbow.
They clearly had a plan to murder as many as they could. They are obviously sick in the head, and they kind of did us a favor by taking their own lives. That might be hard to hear, but by doing that, we now don't have to spend the money and the time for their trial. They also won't have to be fed and housed the rest of their lives. Saved us some money.
Yeah, and regardless of how you feel about them, they deserve to be buried under the prison either way. Now, I want to circle back to the gun thing. I saw this clip earlier from the older millennial. I watched a lot of his videos. I think he's got a lot of great insights. He plays a clip of someone else, and then he reacts to it. Check this out.
I want to hear from the pro-gun community about their thoughts of the idea of arming everyone who attends mosque with a gun.
Yeah, everyone at that mosque has a right to own a firearm, provided they're here legally and they're not felons. And if they had exercised their Second Amendment right, this probably wouldn't have happened. Are you expecting us to be morally inconsistent? Are you expecting us to be constitutionally inconsistent because they're Muslims? No, if you're an American citizen, you have a right to own a firearm. And if you exercise that right correctly, you can stop things like this from happening. Now, anyone who knows me knows I have no special love for the Muslims. I generally think the absolute worst about everything to do with that religion. However, Second Amendment would stop shit like this. And we know this because they tried to mass shoot a Christian church in Texas, and the deacon put that mother down quick because he exercised his Second Amendment right. And we, as pro-gun advocates, advise these Muslims to do the same. Protect your mosque. Protect your synagogue, protect your church, protect the people that matter to you. So yeah, those people exercising their Second Amendment right would have prevented this.
Those are valid points all around from the older millennial. There's proof right there that having a firearm saved lives. If more people in that mosque had one, there might have been even less damage. The first guy in the clip thinks conservatives are going to have a problem with Muslims having firearms. He thought he's found his gotcha moment, I guess.
Yeah, I completely agree with that clip. We want everyone to be armed to prevent things like this. We have said many times before that criminals do not care what the laws are. That is why we call them criminals, because they commit crimes. Everyone at this point should know places of worship are targets. It is a location that sends a message to an entire community when someone starts shooting there. The shooters hated the entire group, so that's why they chose a location like a mosque. We condemn every act of violence, not just ones against certain groups. And as the older millennial said in that clip, if they are here legally, they should use their Second Amendment rights to protect themselves until the police can arrive.
Absolutely, and I think you would agree with me that if more people there had firearms and came and helped, and you had a dozen people with a firearm shooting at these 2 kids, I don't think there's one conservative or one person that has conservative values that would not be okay with that. They would all be cheered and applauded for protecting those children and protecting themselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's 3 versus 2, but the 2 don't care how many lives they take. The more you can outnumber them, the better.
Again, like you said, we condemn any act of violence, regardless of who it's against. We don't want to see anyone get hurt for any reason.
Violence is not the answer. It does not get your message across. You also tend to turn people into martyrs. We saw it with Charlie Kirk. Violence is not the answer. It really says something when your argument is so bad that you just have to silence the other side. That's how we know you're wrong.
100% agree. All right, let's get into our last thing we have for today. J.D. Vance filling in for Caroline Leavitt. He stepped up to the podium and started off with a joke. I thought this was hilarious.
It's cool to be here. I'm going to give a shout out, of course, to the person I am replacing today, Caroline Leavitt, who hopefully is at home enjoying some time with her beautiful kids. I told Carolyn I would stand in for her today for the White House press briefing on the condition that when Usha has our baby in July, that she would be vice president for a couple weeks. So, thank you, guys.
He's showing his human side there. We don't get many jokes from our politicians. I understand they have to be serious most of the time, but they could lighten the mood in some of these press conferences and make them a little more bearable to watch.
Yeah, I thought he did a really good job filling in, just as Marco Rubio did when he filled in for her there a few times. So,
does JD need some time off when his wife has a baby, like he says?
I don't know. I think it would be pretty funny, though, if they said that the vice president was throwing a press conference and then Caroline Leavitt walked out.
For the joke, they should do it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Matt, let's get into our blind ranking here. Today, we are doing countries that you would most want to live in. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay, your first country on the list is Russia.
Ooh, that's a tough one. The question would be, am I part of Putin's inner circle? I don't think he'd like me too much, but I'm going to go number 4.
Number 4,
There could be something worse out there.
There could be. Next up, you have China.
My social credit score would be very, very low. That's a tough one. I think that's got to go number 5. The Chinese love to spy on you as well. Russia, yes, you can't speak your mind freely, but at least you do have a little bit of privacy. China's got to go 5.
Okay, going number 5.
Hopefully nothing worse.
Next up, you have Japan.
Oh, that's a good one. There would be a bit of a language barrier, which would make it tough. But it's a nice country to be in. So I'm actually going to go number 1.
Okay, going
The
number
people
1.
are very friendly.
All right, number 1 for Japan. You have 2 and 3 left. Your next one, I feel like you're going to regret your number 5 pick with China. Iran.
Oh, yeah, that should be number 5. Tough list today.
Yeah.
Well, that has to go 3. It would go lower than Russia as well.
I half expected you to split down the middle with Russia, so you'd leave yourself a little bit of room. All right, and in your number 2 spot, you have Switzerland.
Yeah, other than Iran going 3, that should have been number 5, but I'm happy with Japan at 1.
Yep, Japan 1, Switzerland 2, Iran 3, Russia 4, and China 5. I'm sure you'd like to slide Russia and China up 1 and move Iran to the bottom.
I didn't think you'd put a bunch of crappy ones in the list.
Actually, at first I had Thailand on the list, but then I removed that for Japan.
That would have made Switzerland 1. Thailand would have gone 2.
Yeah.
I put Russia at 4, thinking the other ones would be better. I figured something like Spain would be kind of the middle ground.
Right.
I didn't think Russia would be the middle ground. And when you said Russia first, I didn't want to go 5 because I figured Sudan or something like that was coming next.
Yeah, I considered some African countries, but I switched it up a little bit. All right, well, that is it for episode 58 of the Republic Brothers podcast. Before you click away, please hit the subscribe or follow button. New episodes drop every Monday and Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.